Good morning and welcome to Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg, and it's the 23rd day of September 2024. Welcome to our show today. Today, let's see, we've got in the show, we've got Vicky Davis, and we're going to be talking about the Technocratic Communism and the wonderful work that she's done. At 10 o'clock, it'll be Chris Steele. Hopefully he's feeling better, just so everybody knows. He really was very, very sick, and got a chance to talk to him this weekend for a little while. He's doing much better. But he's going to be on, and hopefully we'll get through the assassination attempt, that analysis, and then what he found connecting BlackRock and another company called Indicor, which is kind of interesting. It goes far past the assassins, the assassins being connected to BlackRock through commercials. There's much more to that. And then at 11 o'clock, we have Hector Vargas on with Jalise Middleton in J6ers, Political Prisoners in America. And I haven't had enough coffee this morning, so I'm just getting ready to go. So good morning, Vicky. How you doing?
Good morning. Fine, thank you. Yeah.
Good. I had a slow start this morning. I got to tell you, today was one of those days where I woke up after the weekend. We had my mom and dad's celebration of life, on Saturday, and then yesterday we were finishing cleaning out her apartment at the home where she was staying, and then we got to do her house, but that's going to be coming after a while. But I am just absolutely exhausted right now. But hey, we're here. We're on point, and we're going to continue to beat up all of this corruption that's going on outside of our 6-foot circle, but it affects us. So, what's on your mind this morning?
Well, I'm working on a project, where I'm trying to explain to people how the La Paz Treaty was really the treaty that Ronald Reagan signed with Mexico, creating an international zone on the border, supposedly for border cleanup, and how that the organization that they built actually was like the beginning of the takeover of our economy, our country, by the environmentalists, where they have basically taken over control of land behind the curtain of environmentalism. And from that, as I try to organize all of the material that I have on that, I found an old video in the C-SPAN archives of the Democratic Leadership Council a forum that was held in 1991. And as I was listening to it, I believe they were proposing Marxism. The conversion of our economy going from an industrial age to the information age.
Your dedicated service reps help make sure your team
just go right ahead and start, didn't it?
To help keep them looking great.
I pulled it up, and now it's all kinds of being annoying.
I hate that when they start up automatically.
I do too. That was incredible. It's like all of a sudden it's here and whammo in the middle of you talking. I'm sorry. Please continue.
Okay. Well, it was like a presentation, a forum of ideas presented by Democratic Leadership Council members, the DLC. I don't know if you've ever looked at that, but basically the DLC was formed originally by a group of Democrats that were called Atari Democrats. The Atari Democrats formed as an organization in the early 80s to lobby for and support the tech industry in Silicon Valley. And so they formed the DLC, and they basically took over policy of the Democratic Party. And as time goes on, you can see where they basically kicked their traditional base of working class people to the curb and instead started favoring tech industry leaders as they built the what they called the third way economy. And the third way, according to my understanding of what they wrote, was the evolution between the industrial age policies, which were for manufacturing and all of that, to the information age and the evolution of the economy for the information age. And so that's what I've been looking at. But this particular meeting gives the most clear explanation of the DLC's standing and what their policies were. And it sounds to me like they were proposing Marxism.
Okay, let's take a look at this just a minute. The ad's gonna play, guys. There's nothing I can do about this. 6 seconds. Sent us. Goodbye. Sent us. Don't care.
Thank you very much, Senator. I want to thank Speaker Flaherty for joining us this morning. He's going back to try to deal with economic policy at the State House.
If you go about 2 minutes and 30 seconds into it, the first speaker starts. And that
What's
guy
that now?
is about 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Okay, that says 15 seconds on this one. So
Yeah.
do you want me to go ahead a bit?
Yeah, just scoot ahead to about 2 minutes. So we'll skip all the introductions and stuff.
All right, let me see if I can move this around just a little bit.
Please welcome Doug Ross.
Yeah. He's from Michigan, by the way.
The DLC is seeking to offer this country a new choice. They're offering a new choice because they don't believe that the old choices are working. That those industrial age organizations we call the National Democrats, the Bush administration, are increasingly becoming obsolete. And in no area is that more evident than in dealing with the new realities of the American economy. Despite the fact that 70% of all Americans have seen their real wages actually decline over the last 15 years. And despite the fact median family income in this country is, in real terms again, basically unchanged since 1973, still neither party offers any coherent, believable, common sense program or strategy for producing a higher standard of living and increased economic security. In other words, better jobs for people in this country and more security. Now, in thinking about the best way to explain the DLC strategy, it's called democratic capitalism. It occurred to me that rather than talk in abstractions, we could look at the experience we've just gone through in the Persian Gulf and see, in ways we've all watched on CNN, what the strategy is for building effective American information age organizations.
Okay, hold there for a second. I want to
strategies used to build
just a minute.
that force that we saw in the Gulf.
Okay.
Okay, the significance of the of him mentioning the Gulf War is that was really a test of the information age systems that were built by the Army. Later on in this video, he mentions Colin Powell and Norman Schwarzkopf and how they basically used technology for logistics. And which logistics, of course, are nothing but information technology at this point. But it was Sam Nunn who and he was chairman of the Armed Services Committee. It was Sam Nunn who was behind the development of the technologies that they used in the Gulf War. Not coincidentally, Sam Nunn is also the guy who supposedly he was just coincidentally at an Aspen Institute conference over in Europe when the alleged coup attempt happened with Mikhail Gorbachev, the August coup. And when you understand what happened between the beginning of that and then actually the beginning of the Reagan administration, when George Shultz was working with Mikhail Gorbachev, that's when the technocratic information age military began. They began developing logistics technology.
What's your thoughts on Reagan?
You know, I voted for him twice, and it has to be one of the biggest regrets of my entire life, as I've found out what he did, what he actually did, as opposed to what people think he did. It's been one of the biggest disappointments of my life. I believe.
Well, I think this is where it's really important for us to question everything. The narratives from either side are very, very manipulative.
Well, if you follow his history, he was when he was president of the Actors Guild in Los Angeles, in Hollywood. He was a communist. You know, he was on the far left, and then he suddenly did an about face. He went to work for GE as a spokesperson, and he was like the host of GE Theater. I'm sure you're too young to remember when they would have these programs that were on TV. It was in the very early days of TV. And GE Theater was one of those programs, and he was a spokesperson for GE at the time. And he went around the country proselytizing to workers that what's good for GE is good for you, you know. And but who he was working for during the war was a man named Lemuel Boulware. And Boulware was in charge of wartime propaganda. So Reagan learned propaganda from a master at it, because they're the ones that produced all the war propaganda material for the American people, so that they would support the war.
Well, anytime I see someone who's a spokesperson, like news anchors and such, my first question is who's telling them what to say?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that was something that I didn't know about, you know, when Reagan ran for office. I didn't even question it, you know, because he had been elected governor of California. So he went into politics. But I have information on that too. He started projects to consolidate local governments, basically, you know, collapsing the old governments. In California, there is an area that had about, I don't know, 5 or 6 little cities, and he consolidated those into a municipal governing structure. Well, a municipal governing structure basically removes elected representation if they don't democratize the metropolitan structure. You know, if they just leave the little town councils in place, then those little town councils are meaningless, because the real power is in the municipal governing structure. So, but most metropolitan governing structures don't put in place an elected organizational structure. You know, they have to change the law to do that. And it turns out that that was one of the things that I was studying in Idaho. I knew they were doing something, but I didn't know what it was. Turned out that they were building a metropolitan governing structure. And it took me probably 6 years or so to figure that out. You know, because it involved land use, it involved partnership agreement with mayors, it involved private sector partnership, and the mayors and this private sector partnership were working together. And the same guy who designed the Kansas City Smart Port, or who was mayor at the time when the Kansas City Smart Port was built, was the same guy that was hired to establish this, what they called the Treasure Valley Partnership, which is this organization of mayors and councilmen working together in a metropolitan governing structure, but without being elected as such. No, they, which it, you know, if you have 5 mayors joined together, yeah, you can vote for your mayor, but the mayor's power is diluted because of this partnership organization with other mayors. He's only 1 vote in 5. So it really basically destroys elected representative government.
Well, it really seems like there's so many different things going on out there right now that they've got their it's not just in that type of a structure. We have like the Michigan Economic Development group, or whatever you call it, and the overreach that they have is just unbelievable.
Yeah, we have that too. We have the Pacific Northwest, PNWER, Pacific Northwest Economic Region. And that's a partnership, and it's statutory in Idaho law. It's partnership between Washington State, Oregon, Idaho, and Montana with the Canadian provinces right above us. Oh, also Alaska. I forgot Alaska.
How can they do that?
Well, they shouldn't be able to. They shouldn't. But that's how our government has been changed. And they're really basically disintegrating the original structure of the United States through regionalism and metropolitan regions, and the international agreements like the La Paz Treaty created. Ultimately, everybody calls it NAFTA, but it's the partnership between the 3 countries, Mexico, US, and Canada.
Wow, okay. So, do you want me to play some more of this video here?
Yeah, go ahead. I just wanted to explain that because Sam Nunn's place in this is hugely important.
I think this is really important to go through this. It's you know, whether anybody else wants to listen to it or not, I use the time to also to talk to you and other people to actually become informed and educated about these things that, unless you've studied it like you have, we're not gonna probably know most of this. So here you go.
Mirror exactly the strategy that is contained in the DLC's Democratic Capitalism Plan. So let's take a look briefly at what happened there. You had a group of officers coming out of Vietnam reaching 2 conclusions. One, that warfare was undergoing substantial and significant change, new realities that had to be confronted. And secondly, decision, commitment, next time they were going to win. Acceptance that realities had changed in basic ways, and a commitment to succeeding, to winning. And then this group of officers, including people like the Powells and the Schwarzkopfs and all kinds of people, at least you and I never really had a chance to see or meet, decided that if they were going to build the first information age military force that the world had ever seen, that if they were going to be able to bring to bear skilled people using advanced technologies in highly flexible and mobile ways to defeat armies that still relied on industrial age hierarchy, top-down command systems, relatively unskilled soldiers disciplined to do fairly routine fighting tasks, they were going to have to do something that didn't look anything like what either Republicans, or for that matter, Democrats in Washington, tended to do when they thought about the economy. They moved beyond left and right. They didn't decide that they needed a bigger bureaucracy in Washington. They didn't make the Pentagon into a decagon. They said that wasn't the answer. They didn't follow what the Republican approach has been, which would have been presumably to let the National Guards each pursue their own course and hope that the combination of National Guards would somehow add up to an effective fighting force. They had a strategy. They had three parts. The first was strategic investment in innovation. They decided they would need certain kinds of systematic capabilities, and they didn't leave it to random chance in the marketplace. They decided what those were. They decided to invest in them.
Okay, right there we got a problem. If they're investing and they're backing the winners and losers economically, that's a big problem. I don't believe that the government should be involved in anything like that.
Well, the whole our whole economy was designed around the idea of government helping these, quote, innovative startups. And so if you look at the SB 8, Small Business Section 8, that's government giving contracts to small businesses. You know, the government used to contract with the big contractors. And then if those big contractors needed help, they would subcontract. Well, the government loans and funding and everything, the programs were set up such that somebody could start a business and then go directly for a contract with the military or with government. So it's not a direct connection of picking winners and losers, although in reality it actually is.
Absolutely, it is. It's unfortunate, but you know, you look back at the beginning of our country and how it worked then. I really do think that we need to go back to what worked, and that's going back and eliminating a lot of this nonsense, because what they're doing is they're just centralizing all of it.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and it goes back in the pockets of the politicians, and also in order to vote in the ones that they want, that they can manipulate.
Yeah, absolutely. I think our Congress, individually and collectively, have just been bought off. They don't represent the American people.
Absolutely agree with you.
They represent big business and the military. The extent of the involvement of the military, I didn't know about. I didn't understand that part of it. There was a gap in my research between the technology for the highway systems, which is part of the logistics system of the military, and the I forgot what I was going to say. The technology for they integrated our systems between the government and the private sector. So basically, they broke through the walls of government into the private sector, and so we've had a merger. I mean, you know, I think that's called fascism, but it's not exactly pure fascism like Stalin had, or not Stalin, Mussolini, but close.
Do we want to save this for later and then maybe go back to an article that you have on your website?
Okay, we can do that.
Or did you want to go on with this? Because this is a very long video. It's a couple hours. So, and I think it's valuable to go through it, but it takes a while to go through that. And
well, this guy speaks only for 15 minutes, and then they go to.
Oh, he's only 15 minutes. Okay. Well, hang on a minute. We'll go back to that then.
But he's probably one of the most important speakers there, besides Lieberman, Joe Lieberman.
Okay, let's listen to him a minute, and then we'll.
They let the private sector build them. Some of your folks right here in this area. But they knew what capacities they would require. Secondly, they decided systematically to invest in the infrastructure they would need to be able to deploy and integrate those new technological capabilities in any kind of situation, most of which would be somewhat unforeseen. All that ability to move forces, to take helicopters, to move gasoline 200 miles out into the desert, all of that was invested in and conceived as part of this strategy. And thirdly, and I think most significantly, they understood that in order to use this new technology flexibly and effectively and to customize it to whatever the needs were, they would need to create a workforce that had the technical competency to be able to use it effectively. And they proved something that we're still not sure about in our domestic context. They proved that middle half of the American labor force, so many of the young men and women who don't go and get four-year university degrees, but graduate from high school, maybe have some community college, they proved that they can use the most sophisticated technology being used anywhere in the world and use it with enormous competence and skill. And disproportionately train people who have had a more difficult time in our domestic school system and economy, disproportionate number of African Americans, Hispanics, Native Americans. Can it be done? We just saw it. We just saw it done. When you then come over to the American economy, you see we are facing, as DLC has been saying, very similar situation. First of all, the basic realities of our economy have changed. What made us so wealthy, what made us so successful, was we, better than anybody else, figured out how to organize systems of mass production where we could make huge runs of high quality, low cost goods, and where the center of the system was a set of machines. You needed two factors to make that happen. You needed capitalists, you needed people who would save the capital, build the machines. And then you needed large numbers of mainly unskilled and semi-skilled people who would attend to them and operate them. And we organized our politics, our industrial age politics, our industrial age parties around those two groups. Republicans championed the owners of capital, wanted to make sure they had the greatest freedom to use their capital in the most productive ways. The Democrats determined to champion the rights of those who worked with these machines to make sure they got a decent share of the fruits of this productive system. They got a fair piece of the pie out of this. Well, what's happened, of course, as we've moved into the information age, the same new communication and transportation technologies that have made what you saw in the Gulf possible have now made it possible to take that routine manufacturing processes and services that we do, move them any place in the world. And someone now who's willing to work for $1 an hour or $2 an hour can attend those same machines, can attend those same work processes, routinely putting data in or taking it out. So now, the only way we can experience an increase in our standard of living, the only way we can get wealthier, is if we can do things that cannot easily be copied in other places where unskilled but willing workers are willing to do routine things for $1 an hour. And that has meant we only can move ahead when we have people who have the power to conceptualize both new problems and new solutions to those problems that customers around the world will pay for. So again, if it can be routinized, it'll be shipped someplace else. We have to be able to make one-of-a-kind machine tools. We have to be able to design investment products for particular groups, age groups, and income groups who want to send their kids to college. We need to be able to create textile coatings for wall covers to be used in particular climates. We need someone who can invent software programs that can solve the accounting problems of your particular business, or specialty alloys in steel that meet one-of-a-kind problems. Only those kinds of goods and services can.
If you can stop that.
So what's happened when we moved from an industrial?
Yep.
Okay, I know you have a tech company. When you do a system, there's an 80-20 rule. You know, basically, if you design your system to solve 80%, if you can solve it 100%, you know, by all means do that. But basically, the rule in designing mainframe systems is that you designed for the 80% and you handled the 20% manually. What he's saying is an inversion. And the reason for that is because there's no return on investment for the 20%. You know, you get your benefit out of the 80%. And so what he's saying is an inversion. You design for the 20% and you just export the 80%. And as you look at around the country at the old industrial towns, they were absolutely devastated by the export of the what you would call the industrial age businesses where they did this mass production. But I mean, what that did, of course, is that it made us like totally dependent on countries like China and Indonesia, places where the manufacturing was exported to. And
now
so,
India, I think, is a much bigger concern than China.
I absolutely agree with you on that. Yeah, because they speak English.
And so, I've been there, not very well, quite honestly, but it's kind of interesting. You know, you look at all the textiles and who's been buying up all of our old textile manufacturing equipment. It's been India, it should be very concerning. I mean, I think we should be producing things here on American soil, all the way from the top of the chain to the bottom of the chain. And I mean, there's certain things that you probably need to trade with other countries based on raw materials. But past that, we need a very strong manufacturing economy in the United States, and not just in the raw materials, but actually manufacturing products here. It's really disturbing to see the ability to have China walk right in here with absolutely no environmental controls or labor controls on it. Which, I mean, as a pure constitutionalist, I'm not sure that the government needs to get involved in a whole lot of that, but the regulation is really what's brought this country to its knees. We can't compete with any of these other countries, and we think that they're doing a better job. Well, you know, they've got absolutely, we can't compete because we're so overburdened with regulation.
Well, yeah, that plus they can get more return on investment in China. They gave China the money to come over here to buy up things in our economy. When I found out that it was, you know, the Chinese government that is investing in our country. You know, they bought Smithfield Hams, and they own over 300,000 acres of farmland in the United States. I mean, I just had steam coming out of my ears. I mean, what the hell is this? Well, they call it.
Look at the ports too. And yes, what happened to the Panama Canal? I mean, that was one of the dumbest things that our country has done, because China owns the Panama Canal now.
Well, they were planning on having a turning the countries of the Americas into like a European Union. And so I'm sure Jimmy Carter probably thought, well, it doesn't really matter because, you know, we're gonna control this whole continent. And so yeah, that was one of the dumbest things that he ever did. But I mean, he got us involved in China and in Taiwan and so forth. I was actually surprised about that. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, there's all sorts of bad things. Eric White just says, special blessings, everyone. Public-private partnerships originally came out of the military operations. Is the government conducting a military operation against its own people? Something to ponder.
Yes, I would say yes, because the how I got into this and looking at the military involvement, which I didn't really look at very closely, was that we were looking at the establishment of the North American Union, you know, the La Paz Treaty, the NAFTA superhighway. The plan was to build an international highway system going like from Central America clear up through the United States all the way up into Canada, so that it was an international highway system. Well, when I first started writing about it, Dick Cheney was Secretary of Defense. He said there is no such thing. So a friend of mine actually went through the congressional record and found every reference to NAFTA superhighway, you know, proving that he was lying to the American people when he said that.
Isn't that like the first language of politicians is lying?
I think it is, yes. I think it's the first test. But anyway, so I was looking at the building of this NAFTA superhighway, and then of course the interstate system is the Dwight David Eisenhower defense highway system. It was built by Eisenhower so that they could move men and equipment across the country in a hurry if they needed to.
Allegedly.
Okay. Well, that's what the idea was. But if you knew what the old roads were like, I remember going over Donner Summit. I don't know if you've ever gone from California to Nevada, but it's an interstate highway system now. But when I was a kid, it was like a 2-lane road, and it was like a sheer drop off, you know, to down the mountain, you know, if you made a mistake. And those old 2-lane roads, especially through the mountains, they were so treacherous, so dangerous. Anyway, and the roads weren't always open, you know, in the wintertime, they'd close them down. you're stuck wherever you are. So anyway, but it was the Eisenhower started the building of the interstate highway system with the idea of being able to move men and equipment across the country in a hurry if we need to. So those were defense highways to start with. Well, commercial traffic, of course, took over, and the whole idea of military was forgotten. But the military did retain control of the roads to and from transportation facilities, meaning airports, meaning trucking locations, warehouses, things like that. So the military did keep control of those, and that system is called STRAHNET, STRAHNET. It's the military highway system, and they manage and control those roadways to this very day. So anyway, I forgot. Oh, so that's what I was studying the highway system because of the internationalization of our highway system. And of course, I found documents on the technology that they planned on implementing. Okay, it was like full technological enablement, freight tracking from whatever the source, if it came from Asia or whatever, freight tracking, tracking on our highway systems, trucks with RFID so that you could automatically track them as they pass by certain structures. So that's how I kind of backed into the military highway system. It wasn't that I started out looking at the military for logistics. It was the North American logistics that I started looking at, and the military was just kind of there on the sidelines. And so
it's really interesting that all of the tracking and such, because I don't know how many people know exactly how complex that tracking is, because we see it in the rail industry. They know where every single car is on our American rail system, and it's kind of inspiring. Every single car has got the RFID tags on each corner, and as it goes down the track, it's reading that. So it's very interesting when you're in those industries to see how that actually works.
Yeah, my husband and I, in about 1978, 79 or something like that, we actually wrote a rail car tracking system.
Really?
We had a friend who was working for, I forget what company it was, but he got a contract to track rail cars. Now, this was before our RFID and that sort of thing. So what the system did was actually to keep ownership information of the rail car, because people could lease rail cars. They owned their own rail cars. And so you keep track of where the rail car started, where it was supposed to be going, because it's a very flexible, loosey-goosey thing. You can add a car, take a car off, that sort of thing. So yeah, that was pretty interesting, but that was like a side contract.
Yeah, actually, they're actually reading anomalies on the wheels as they go past, also called kips. And if they don't pass test, or if they see that there's something wrong with a wheel, they have to pull off the next available rail shop, get them off the track. So when all of these derailments were happening, I thought it was really interesting to see that, how they're handling it. And also, there's a lot more derailments than people realize that there are.
Oh yeah, they don't tell people unless it has caused some damage.
Yeah, it's like a daily. It's multiple times a day that happens, and so it was kind of interesting. And I was looking at the couplers and that sort of thing, and most of the stuff that they were showing was not even something that was allowable to be on the track. So that sets up another strong discussion with what happened in East Palestine. But I digress.
Uh, it's hard not to do that when you start talking about these subjects of technology.
Well, and I really do think that this is the better way to address this, is that we have discussions, because things will come out in the discussion that people know, not unplanned. All of a sudden something will ding, and an idea will step forward, or you'll think about something that you've forgotten about, and it just kind of fits into the conversation, and it's a great way to learn, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because what you discover from your own thinking is something that you won't forget.
Right. And asking questions. Got to ask questions. Lots of questions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's how I know that the automation, actually, the automation on highway systems, they started talking about that in the early 1960s in California. Now, when I was a kid in California, there was between where I lived and where my parents worked, Oakland to Hayward, I think it's about 20 miles. But even back when I was in kindergarten, there was bumper to bumper traffic during commute hours. So they started planning for automated systems as far back as that. And then in about 1968, there was a program on called 21st Century, I think, where the host of the program, they would have a topic of the week, where they would talk about the future of various things that were going on in the United States. Well, one of them that I remembered was technology for the highway systems to help with the flow of traffic on, in the heavily traveled corridors where you have the big backups of traffic. And so California really started working on that in the 1960s because they had such a horrendous problem with traffic. But it was those systems. And when I started looking at the NAFTA superhighway and I saw the technology, it just, came right back to me what I saw when I was in about 1968 when this program was on. And so my first pass at writing about the interstate technology in the interstate, I called it the what was it? The technology that ate our I don't remember, but anyway, it. So I wasn't unfamiliar with the concept of technology and the highway system. Well, and in my research on that, I found out that Germany was developing technology for communications between the car and the highway in about 1984, and it was called the Prometheus project.
Mm-hmm.
And and then Japan, they were kind of like working together with Japan. Japan was working on the robotics part of it, which the automated toll booths. I mean that would fall under the robotics. So it's Germany and Japan and the United States working on the highway technology. In 1984, the United States was afraid they would get behind in the technology. So that's when that started. And 1990 is when President Bush announced his new transportation plan that encompassed all forms of transportation, and in particular, intermodal commerce zones where two forms of intermodal commerce zone is where any two forms of transportation come together. Could be a parking lot and a bike rack, or an airport and the freight terminals that are around it. Those are called intermodal commerce zones, and they are, of course, all logistically connected. So,
have you ever looked at there's somebody out there called Mouthy Buddha. Have you ever looked at some of the videos from Mouthy Buddha where he talks about Terramar and the logistics on the oceans with the containers and that sort of thing?
No, I haven't, but that's part of it, is the freight tracking.
It is crazy what's going on out here with the freight tracking, because the concerns I have is like China controlling the ports, and many of our ports. I mean, our ports that are international ports, we're only even looking at 2% of the containers that are passing through them. We have no idea what's going on there. I know there was a gal in Detroit who was at a party, and she got a hold of her friend, and it turns out that she was kidnapped and put in a container, and the police wouldn't open it up. They found her dead on a shore over in Africa 2 weeks later. And so there's so much nefarious stuff going on. We have no idea what's being shipped to from whatever, and we're not controlling it. I'm going to throw this up here just a minute, and we'll watch a little bit of this, because I think this is fairly significant.
Go to your kitchen right now
I
and try
actually
this
like
turmeric hack
Mouthy
that
Buddha
outshines
a
those
lot.
upbake
If you
for
go
shedding
on
2 or more
BitChute,
pounds
you'll
almost
find
overnight.
the videos,
Okay, so
and it's
everyone has
worth
been
your
asking me.
time. We'll just do a little bit.
Okay.
I think this will show some of it, but it leads back to sex trafficking of children and such. And we need to be aware of this, that here it is. Are you a citizen of the United States? Yes. Are you a citizen of England? Yes. Are you a citizen of any other land? This is Ghislaine Maxwell. Yes, Terramar. And I think that everybody needs to understand what Terramar is.
Have the Weather Channel have a look at what's happening for the first time in history, actually, in the high seas.
Thank you so much, Gillian. And we've got wonderful new technology here at the Weather Channel, and we are able to deliver a point forecast for the Arctic high seas. Temperatures will, for the most part, only get up into the negative 20s Celsius through the entire week.
On July 2nd, 2020, an arrest was made.
FBI agents arrested Ghislaine Maxwell yesterday, nearly 1 year to the day after Epstein was arrested.
All signs pointed to this particular incident being the story of our time.
I think a lot of people are wondering, the big question overall is, what does Ghislaine Maxwell know about what Jeffrey Epstein is alleged to have done?
Unfortunately, most of the public opinion in the U.S. is controlled by media corporations. So as soon as the coverage of Ghislaine's arrest ended, social media stopped discussing it, and the coronavirus took center stage.
Idaho is set to open about 15 seconds from now. It is expected to surge on positive coronavirus vaccine news. You can watch the big board as it opens this morning.
But among all the gossip and brief media coverage, a crucial aspect of Maxwell's story has gone largely unnoticed, the implications of which, in the groups that surround it, are as vast as they are mysterious. This is Ghislaine Maxwell's Terramar Project. According to the New York Times, Terramar was a, quote, opaque organization that had no offices and gave no grants to other organizations. And shortly after Jeffrey Epstein was arrested, Terramar officially announced their closure. But what was the Terramar Project? At first glance, it would appear that the now infamous Ghislaine Maxwell had a soft spot for the environment.
We have created 5 gigantic gyres of plastic and garbage that swirl in the open ocean. This is the largest fishing net. It fits 12 Boeing 747s in its mouth. We don't know very much about the ocean, actually, it turns out. Less than about 1% of it has been explored. So
now, she was a submarine pilot, just so everybody knows.
The more of them that we have,
that is fascinating. I didn't know any of this.
It's our ocean.
What's that?
I said, that's fascinating. I didn't know any of this.
Yeah, there's a lot. So this is an area that I studied for pretty extensively because her husband was in charge of the container traffic and probably about 98% of the container traffic across the world. So
I'll be
when you
damned.
look, what's that?
I said, I'll be damned. That
Yeah,
is
and so yeah, it's a Scott Borgeson, I think is his name, and he was in charge of the container traffic. So when I look at this, because we own a very large rail facility on the UP's main line between Chicago and Los Angeles, so I've got a decent amount of information on logistics and how it actually works and such. When you look at the tracking of this stuff and how it works, and who's controlling that traffic, the question is what the hell are they hiding? That's what I want to know on a lot of this. It's not necessarily what it appears to be, and what are they bringing into the ports? What are they bringing across our country? What are they bringing across in these container ships? And there's a tracking app too that not only can you track planes, because I like to track planes and such. I'm real curious about that, but you can track the container ships also. And that it's super interesting. But if you watch some more, we'll watch a little bit more of us because it's going to really pique your interest. And quite honestly, if we look at things across the globe, Denmark has a huge part in this too. And when you look at
global. These are global systems.
They are, and they basically steamrolled the American small to medium business. And watch how many of them they buy up. If anybody gets a little bit successful, all of a sudden a corporation with mergers and acquisitions, they will constantly buy up and gobble them up. They're parasitic, and they put them out because they want to control the entire game.
Yeah.
That's it. And so when I look back at this too, there's something else that I want to bring forward that I think is interesting. Went to Promontory earlier in the year, the Transcontinental Railroad, and I'm going to call massive bullshit on this. It is not any way, shape, or form what they said that the Transcontinental Railroad was all about. This was about extermination of the Native Americans by destroying the American bison. They killed them by the millions. And there's millions of acres out there and I mean millions and millions of acres out there that they're controlling, that we have no access to, no information that's going out there. And there was no reason why they had to, for a 30-foot right away, basically through the American West, had to exterminate the American bison. That would have been so easy to keep going and use it for a food source for everyone. But that's not what they wanted. They wanted complete extermination. So this is much deeper than what anybody or what most people put their hands around. So just watch for a minute longer.
But as you're about to see, Maxwell's Terramar project isn't just about, quote, protecting the oceans.
And I want to also bring up the dual citizenship with Israel that's going on with almost all of these people, as well as the people in Congress.
But controlling and owning them.
So the ocean is the next frontier. It's the next big debate. It's the next big grab of space.
The person who has been the inspiration behind the Sustainable Oceans Alliance, who has something called Terramar Project. She controls the oceans around the world.
There you go.
And
she controls it.
I invite my dear friend, Ghislaine Maxwell, to tell us how we can own the oceans. You have 3 seconds. Thank you.
I'll do my best.
Ownership and control of the world's oceans carries with it all kinds of possibilities. Most of the human population has no idea what's going on in the depths of the sea. Maxwell, however, knows a thing or two about the high seas.
Started when I was a little girl. I grew up watching Jacques Cousteau on TV and became mesmerized with the oceans. It led to me becoming a deep worker submersible pilot.
But surely
Ghislaine's dad, Robert Maxwell, was part of Mossad. And so when you look at this, and this is where, okay, watch, ADL is going to come after Donna Brandenburg, but so what? I've talked about it a lot. The country of Israel is not necessarily representative of the Jewish population. It was actually set up by Britain through the Balfour Declaration. And so when you look at the operations here, I'm going to say that it is my opinion that the CIA and Mossad, and also the British intelligence is indistinguishable from each other, and they're running amok all over the place with things we can't even get our hands around.
Yeah.
Child trafficking have no relation to her, quote, Terramar project. But this perspective begins to break down as soon as one browses.
I don't know if you heard that the ties to child trafficking.
Individuals and groups
This is what this is about.
With the organization. According to Maxwell's recent testimony, Jeffrey Epstein supplied her with funding for Terramar. But that's obvious, right? But if we move along, we see that this picture shows Maggie Nixon with Barack Obama. The same Maggie Nixon pictured here. Who was in a film that was created by oceanographer Sylvia Earle.
Ever since I met Sylvia, I was absolutely enamored with her. Just really inspired with her love of the ocean and of exploring and creating like short films for each hope spot.
Great to see you.
You know, there's so many of your constituents who are out there that most people don't even know about.
I had a question for you, and that is, what's it like going down 1,000 meters?
I'd love to show you.
Huh? I mean, I've done some diving, but I think right around 100, I kind of say, okay, it's time to turn back.
This is the same Sylvia Earle that in early 2019 said, quote, I am thrilled to be a founding citizen of Terramar. Maggie Nixon was the granddaughter of Agnes Nixon, creator of the soap opera All My Children.
Do you like this?
And is the daughter of Sarah Nixon, who can be seen here tagged with a group of apparent friends. Notice the name Sarah and the username 3-Ring Circus. As you can see, the username checks out because we can verify that 3-Ring Circus on Instagram is in fact Sarah Nixon. But what's the big deal with this picture? It's certainly not suspicious to hang out with friends. Well, given that I've already been kicked off YouTube, now I can show you who Sarah Nixon appears to be having a lot of fun with.
James
Comet Ping
Elephantis.
Pong in Washington, D.C. James, thank you so much for being here.
Bam. It's one great big organized crime syndicate. And it should be sobering to everyone, because exactly what we're talking about here, Vicky. I'm going to add Chris to the stage. Hey, Chris, how you doing?
Great. How are you?
Good. We're talking about all of these connections with the treaties and that sort of thing, and controlling the transloading, economic transloading zones, that sort of thing. And also how they're moving around goods and services, as well as taking over and waging economic warfare against we the people. They just really want us to be a slave class. That's it, as they call us, useless eaters, and disempower basically all of us. But anyhow, that's amazing, isn't it, Vicky? You didn't know any of that?
Didn't know any of it, not any of it. But,
yeah, there's a lot of links that, this is the strength of all of us researchers getting together, who actually will go into this and not only research together, but find the receipts to prove out what we're talking about. It's of critical importance that we go down these rabbit holes and we find exactly what's happening so that we can bring it forward. The Mouthy Buddha has got a bunch of different videos, and I suggest that everybody spend a little time watching them. I can post some of them because he's pretty informed about the child trafficking, sex trafficking rings. And Epstein was just the tip of the iceberg, just the tip. Ghislaine Maxwell, when you look into her husband, Scott Borgerson, that is extraordinarily sobering. And then you can take that right back to Denmark and some of the things going in there with Tvind. Tvind is another corporation people should be looking into.
I don't know, but I love talking to you about this. I know so I think I can count on one hand the number of people that I can talk to about my research and how it all connects together.
Well, most people just want headlines, and that's all they want is headlines, but they don't want to get in and do the work that it takes to actually find out who's really connected, how they're connected, and also the corporations that they hide behind. And not only that, I'm going to say it right now, and this is not popular, but a lot of the grassroots groups out there that people want to grab onto, they're just mini cults. Most of them are mini cults that are very similar to the political parties. They function exactly the same. So if somebody has an issue going forward that it starts out with a good intention, guaranteed they're going to be infiltrated. This is a cancer on this planet that's going around, and it's satanic to the core. This is the same thing that they were dealing with in Babylon, etc. It's consolidation of power. It's a consolidation of power. And if we don't understand how this whole thing works, not only will we be caught up in the tentacles that they have out there, because there's tentacles all over the place, to control us and eventually, kill the ones that are dissenters. That this is what this is all about. So they have a compliant zombie apocalypse type people that just go along to fight for their ends. And you almost never see them. You'll almost never see the ones that are actually on top. Another thing to tell everybody is I suggest everybody look into the islands around the Dutch banking families too. That is sobering. Go back to the East India Trading Company. It's sobering. It goes back to the same people, but you almost never see them, and we get stuck on the politicians. The politicians are a bunch of idiots that are put in place just because they can be compromised. They're not the ones in control. They're just a puppet that somebody's got their hand up their behind, moving their mouth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, that is so true. The whole thing with ports, though. Did you ever look at the Admiralty law?
I look into everything.
Okay, well, it started with Admiralty law, but they carried it forward to the GATT agreement and forward to the World Trade Organization, that there is a ports network, but your port can actually, landlocked countries can have a port that is equivalent to a seaport by agreement of being able to transit from the ocean to the landlocked country. Well, they defined, they enabled that system in the United States, which is how you can have a Kansas City smart port that is a port. It's an inland port. And that's ultimately what they were going to be building in Idaho, was an inland port in the Boise Meridian area. But that's hugely significant for understanding the freight tracking coming into the continental United States. Freight tracking doesn't just end at the water's edge; it comes on shore, and so that was justification.
And I'm really concerned with that, because we don't have a handle on our ports at all. Not at all. We have no idea
what's for sale. They put them up for sale. Like, do you remember? I don't know, 15 years ago or so, when Dubai tried to take over 5 ports on the eastern seaboard. Do you remember that?
I remember. I remember all of our ports have been kind of like up in the air. I mean, it's crazy. They go back and forth too. President Trump, the rightful president of the United States, actually dealt with the Los Angeles port and blocked. It was Taiwan. I think it was. I got to think. I shouldn't quote this because I won't remember it accurately right now. But he was blocking the Chinese ownership of that port. but China has tried in who's involved with that. Most of our politicians who've been playing ball with them, they don't get in place unless they're playing ball with this global crime syndicate. It is absolutely a global crime syndicate.
No question. No question
Okay.
about it.
I'm gonna go ahead and put this. This is gonna be great. You're gonna love this. I'm gonna go ahead and post this so we can look at this too. Hang on a minute. Yeah, let's see if I can get it off the app store here a minute. It's marine traffic, ship trafficking. Let me see if I can move this. I'm gonna see if I can send this off a minute. Anyhow, talk amongst yourselves. Welcome, Chris. I see you're feeling better.
Feeling a little better.
Yeah, that's good. I sent Chris a whole bunch of stuff. We were all concerned about. I had everybody praying for you last week because Chris was. You sounded terrible.
Thank you so much. All this that you sent me is quite different. But thank you. I'm trying it, and so we'll see. I think it's already making a difference.
Well, I think too, this is something that Vicky, if you can stay on, I think you'll enjoy this because Frank is a beast when it comes to research, and so
When it comes to what?
Yeah, Chris, you may call it Chris Deal or Frank. He's a beast researcher, right? And he traveled around with me while I was campaigning for governor, and we got a lot of time to dig into a lot of different things because Chris has a background in the military, he's a Marine, as well as has done a lot of other things that we shall not discuss from here on forward unless you discuss them. But it's really interesting to find people that have worked within the system that come out and understand really how it works. Not how they say it works, but how it actually works. And I think that there's a lot we can learn from each other just in these instances. I'm going to try to get this marine tracking up because you'll really think this is interesting.
Well, Frank, what was your main subject that got you started?
My what, ma'am?
Your main topic that got you started researching?
I think it was my so the government had me doing things, and the things that I was doing that's supposed to be for the good of America wasn't, to me, at least not the way I was raised, although that doesn't matter when you go into government. But it just went against my grain as to what I was doing versus what's right and what's wrong. And so once I got into the researching, I basically found that our government is just a part of the big criminal. It's a world. It's a global syndicate, a global crime. Not even a family. It's your major. Just about every major country, city, port, whatever, that runs this country. BlackRock and Vanguard. Those people aren't even, I don't think they're even from the United States. I have to do more work at that. But a lot of the influences that we have as a country that we thought was within the borders of our country are actually from everywhere else.
Yeah, I found a very similar thing, that the U.S. policies, they present as being for America, but they're actually not. They'll go do something in a foreign country or make an agreement with foreign country, and it benefits the corporations and the foreign country, but it's a net negative for the people of the United States. You know, either economically or financially. You know, we pay for what they call foreign aid, but this is a foreign assistance that actually like draws from the American economy.
We're harboring an enemy. And this is the corporations. When you've got as much foreign ownership in these corporations that are buying American land, I don't know why this hasn't been called out clearly. It's like no go here. It's not just the countries. It's doing it through the corporations to own U.S. land. This should never have been allowed, except for the politicians and the powers that be run the world through these corporations and through the corporate veil. And then they take all of our money and they do corporate welfare. I don't know what it was. It was Ford got Mary, what's her last name? The person involved in Ford, I can't think of her last name right now, but $846 million in corporate welfare for Ford. And there's no promise that they produce for the American people. There's no standard there. We're just doing money fetty to these corporations. And
Right.
What does it benefit the United States and the people? Nada, zip, zilch, nothing. There's no benefit to us whatsoever. And then they buy the lands, they buy them near a military bases. And for what? One great big global crime syndicate to absolutely abuse Americans and American citizens into oblivion.
Yes. Well, within the next year, they're going to be talking about raising taxes. So, you know, if people aren't really interested in the stuff that we're talking about, at least pay attention to this part about taxes, because they are robbing you.
Well, yeah, they're at this point in time, we're at about an 85% tax rate.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
I don't know why people don't understand that with all the discretionary taxes and the, you know, we're at about an 85% tax rate, and that doesn't include them manipulating the market with
and the hidden tax
is created.
Yeah, there are hidden taxes that people don't know about.
I bet there are.
Yeah,
and they're going to. This isn't going to get any better if, of course, if they stay in office. This is all part of the plan. This, I mean, who in their right mind would do the spending that Joe Biden has done with the $1 trillion here and the $1 trillion there? You know, it's like money grows on trees. You know, where's all this? You got to ask yourself, where's all this coming from? You know, right?
Uh-huh.
So really, this is to me, it looks like a planned takedown economically of our country. It's a planned takedown of our country globally. And there's a lot of fingers in a lot of pies, and they're all attacking us from different ways or in different ways. And it comes from all different ways. Now, the one thing that you were talking about earlier, darn, it was on the tip of my tongue.
I know you were going to go to BlackRock. I wanted to show you this. We've got 286,751 vessels that they are monitoring with this marine traffic.
Wow. Okay, that's the first time I've seen the logistics system graphically presented.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I was down in Florida a while back, and I saw probably the biggest ship I've ever seen in my life. Not that I'm a boat person, you know, or a watercraft person, but I looked it up, and so I'm like, because I got to do that, right? Because we have to do that. And I looked it up, and I was like, wow, that is incredible, and kind of sort of obfuscated exactly what I was looking at, but that's okay. I got enough of information to find out that it was a very large military vessel.
So what are we looking at with all the red on the map?
Right. You know, there's different categories in here too, and it would take me a while to break this one down, but you can, let's see, we've got ports. Here we go. Let's look at the ports. Oh, it's going to make me sign in or something like that. So I'm not signed in here. The app works pretty good on this, and I've got the app on my phone. So you can look at these are the different categories you can look at: vessels, ports, lighthouse, companies. So you can look at companies, all kinds of things here. Containers, that sort of thing. If I was logged in or registered on this device, you could be able to see it, but because I'm not, you can't. Interesting for diagnostic at least, and getting more information.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So okay, did you figure out what you're going to talk about, Chris?
Huh?
Did you figure out what you had on the tip of your tongue there?
No, I'm not feeling that well, so I'm done. I'm not even going to try. I might hurt myself.
So you were bringing up the fact that, let's talk about what the connections with Indicor, BlackRock, and the attempted assassination of the rightful president of the United States, President Donald J. Trump.
Right, and I definitely, this is not just a United States issue. This is something that's coming outside of that. And the ties, it's interesting that the ties to the assassinations, the ties go to BlackRock, with the first shooter, Crooks, being in a commercial that BlackRock made. And then there was an ad that BlackRock made, and at the last part of the very end of the ad, it turns and it shows the picture of this guy standing there looking like he just got blown up by a bazooka. He really looked rough, and that was the guy that tried to take out our president at the golf course. And so it really, you have
It was the same commercial, Chris?
Not the same commercial, no. It was a completely different one.
Huh.
A completely different ad. And they were doing a pan around, where they were panning the camera around, and they were saying something that didn't really make a whole lot of sense anyway, and blah, blah, blah. And then, bam, it showed this guy standing there like, he looked like he wanted to go out and kill somebody. But BlackRock, they have, when I went ahead and I did the research on the AGR building where Crooks was,
mm-hmm.
I got a parent company of AGR, which was like AGR International or something. And then what came up was the fact that they sold the AGR building 4 months prior to the assassination in March. Okay, so then I went, okay, so who'd they sell it to? Because the thing that I found suspicious was the first thing they did, this media company, Technocratic, they tried to separate Crooks from knowing anybody at that building. Okay, that he had no ties at all whatsoever to the CEO of AGR. Well, come to find out that when I took a closer look, the AGR building was sold to a company called Unicor. Did I say that right?
Indicor.
Indicor. Yep, Indicor. So I looked at Indicor, and I found out that Indicor, that the building that I guess does all their HR stuff and whatever, is right here in Sarasota on University Parkway. So I looked into Indicor, and I looked at who the signer was for Indicor, The signer is BlackRock. BlackRock signs off on everything in that building. It's like the shell game, you know. They try to separate themselves, get as far away as they can with other names of other companies and stuff like that. But it all basically comes right back to BlackRock, right? So BlackRock, crooks being in a BlackRock commercial, technically, media company saying, "Oh well, there's no connection." And I did research on technically. Technically, that media company, their partnerships. One of them's in Netherlands, so it definitely has a global touch to it, and they also, with technically, God, I'm really going.
It's one of those days. You know what? We're all like half power. We all need more coffee today, but so be it. We're still here.
Well,
it's a Monday, isn't it, Chris?
Huh?
It's a Monday.
No, I'm. You know, yesterday.
Yeah.
I went to work and I shouldn't have, because when I had to leave work and come back, and I had a worse. I mean, I was really. The fever wasn't good.
Check this out. You know, we'll come back to BlackRock recruiter. War is good for business. You know, I just don't think that we're on the same wavelength with them. Just saying.
You know, BlackRock had a investment firm that made a big investment when just before Donald Trump got shot the first time.
Yeah.
And then they found out that they messed up because Donald Trump turned his head and evaded the death, you know, the bullet. So BlackRock then went and said to the debtor, "Hey, we made a clerical error. There's like 5 zeros that shouldn't have been there. It was an accident." How can it be an accident to accidentally put 0, 0, 0, 0?
Yeah, it's like the nuclear codes or something. That was the password for what? How many years? So listen to this. I give an example. Russia. This is what the guy says. War is good for business. This is a recruiter for BlackRock. Ukraine is good for business. I give an example. Russia blows up Ukraine's grain silos. The price of grain is going to go mad up. The Ukraine economy is tied very largely to the wheat market, global wheat market. Price of bread, you know, literally everything else goes up and down. This is fantastic if you're trading. Volatility creates opportunity to make profits. War is effing good for business. It's exciting when shit goes wrong. BlackRock manages $20 trillion. It's incomprehensible numbers. And so they have so much money they can buy people. It says you can take this big effing ton of money and buy people. I work for a company called BlackRock. It's not who is the president. It's who's controlling the wallet of the president. You can buy your candidates. First, there are senators. These guys are cheap. Got 10 grand, you can buy a senator. I'll give you 500 grand right now. It doesn't matter who wins. They're in my pocket. This is literally what's happening here. And, you know, when you read stories like this, isn't an expose? This is crazy with the amount of public-private partnerships, with the economic warfare going on. If you take a non-cynical view of business leaders, don't. This expose from James O'Keefe shows just how soulless they are. In the clip, BlackRock recruiter explains to an undercover reporter how to buy a politician and how war is effing good for business. BlackRock is one of the world's leading asset and investment managers, which owns significant shares of companies like Amazon, Microsoft, Anheuser-Busch, Meta, Target, Procter & Gamble, Comcast, CNN, Fox, and yes, Pfizer, to name a few. And it just gets from bad to worse. And you know what? We can't. I'm really going to tell you right now, we really need to start rethinking how the business climate in the United States is run, because it's messed up. Let's listen to this guy just a second.
They don't want to be in the news. They don't want people to talk about them. They don't want to be anywhere on the radar.
Why not?
They don't want to be in the news. They don't want people to talk about them. They don't want to be anywhere on the radar.
Why not?
They don't want to be in the news.
Interesting, though, that this is missed. So all of us are actually, the amount of money that we spend with these companies, we're involved in it at this point in time, because they're, if you're spending money with these companies, which all of us are at some point, because we don't have our local strong economies, because that's what they did to destroy it, so that we would be dependent on them. They want us dependent on them, so that basically we really can't get away. And then you look at local politicians. I was reading something down in Van Buren, Michigan. I've got a friend down there. They are fighting to limit and destroy groundwater use rights, and that they control even our water rights. And Nestle's part of it. Nestle's taken how many millions and millions of gallons of water out of the state of Michigan for a $250,000 permit. Every single one of these people should be absolutely tried for treason. The corporations, eliminated. That this corporate nonsense that started with Citizens United gave them a status of a person. So they have every single right that a person has, legal and lawful rights. That's how they're getting away with it. And that's exactly what they had planned. This is an intentional takedown. Just like when you talk about the treaties, Vicky, there's more to it. It all worked together. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's all been strategically planned. They exploit they exploit our laws to basically take advantage of us and cheat us. It's like the government sold land to people, but for the most part, they kept the mineral rights. Water is a mineral. And so, they've been selling water out from under people. They're doing the same thing in Idaho that you just described. They're doing wherever that was.
Michigan.
They're trying to take water rights away from people.
They're doing it all the time. If you have to have a permit to drill a well, on your own land, unbelievable.
Yeah, that's really a big issue. I mean, in Idaho, of course, because we have so many farms, and Idaho was basically an agricultural state about 9 years ago or so. They actually were going to try and give the farmers all of their they were going to let the water run and count it against the farmers, even though they hadn't used the water. And so, in effect, they were trying to steal the water rights right out from under the farmers. They would have just more water than they could use at the beginning of the season and no water at the end of the season. It was just insane.
Yeah, it's gotten to the wacky point right now because they're trying to own all of our land, like you said, in the mineral rights. And in Michigan, the DNR, which is on its new name, I think it's Eagle or something like that, and they are in charge of 4.6 million acres in the state of Michigan, and they own the mineral rights and the logging rights. And I want to know where the damn receipts are. It's like, if they own them and they've been logging and clear cutting like crazy, where's that money going? How come they have to keep, upping our taxes because they're mismanaging the land that they're supposed to be protecting? If you look up north, if you actually drive up there, you can see acres and acres. And I'm telling you, thousands of acres completely clear cut and destroyed. We as a company, we could never, and we would never be allowed to leave stumps and uneven ground. That land is wrecked, and it's going to be wrecked for decades.
Well, what they did with those trade agreements was to include multinational investor rights. And if a multinational corporation wants to do business in the United States and our laws prevent them from doing business, then they take us to court and we have to pay them for the business that they didn't get to engage in.
Who in the heck would buy into this nonsense? You know, it's like if that's the case, you know, I don't think I've ever heard it put that way, multinational investor rights. But the threat of being sued by these corporations to go against what we the people want, that is absolutely nonsense.
Yeah, well, that's how they sued California over a chemical in gasoline called, I think it was MTBE. California prohibited that in gas sold in California. Well, they took California to court and they lost. The multinational corporation won. So a multinational can override our environmental laws if in their product they have something that we prohibit. They can sue under these international agreements and they get to do whatever it is. And so it's absolutely insane. You know, what I've seen over my years of research is that the policies that the United States adopts, that the Senate ratifies in treaties, are not at all in the interest of the American people.
Not at all.
Yeah. And so it's kind of unbelievable because it's like you're living in a country where the country is being run by the enemy.
Yeah, and we're Americans are second-class citizens. Mm-hmm. We're not being heard. They're not doing what we want done to govern the country. They're literally being run by everyone else except us.
Yes. Yep. I completely agree.
Yeah. So what we really need to talk about, I think Jalise said she's going to cancel the person that was supposed to be on today. What am I doing tomorrow? Okay, and so she's going to be on tomorrow, but something happened there, so we're going to cancel her segment of it. So we're going to continue on here. So Jalise J6ers isn't going to something happened there. So we're going to be back on tomorrow with that. So today it's just us finishing up the show today, which is fantastic.
It happened here too.
What we need to do is figure out how to cancel those treaties. We have to get out of these treaties. And we have to be running. We got to get out of the UN. We got to get it out of the World Health Organization. We've got to get away from funding all this nonsense. And anybody that's sitting in the seats that's got their little puppet strings pulled, they're traitors. They're all of them traitors. And every single one of them that is bought into any of this has got to be treated as a traitor to we the people. They are all guilty as hell.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's frustrating. Because we've as Americans, we've adopted this sense of security and unity and patriotism. And the whole time when we're trusting a government, a nation, people to handle our money, people to handle the treasury, right? People to handle the important stuff. And you find out that all along, they've been dealing with other countries that are like fascists, like Hitler. That stuff hasn't gone away. That stuff has never stopped. We never won the Second World War. Do you know that?
I do. We didn't win the first
either.
That's
true. I totally agree with you on that.
And we have
win the First World War either. The First World War was about putting the Federal Reserve in place. The Second World War was about the UN.
Right.
Yeah, so when our soldiers go to war, I think they make war, they're actually making war on our young people. Then it's not war against a foreign enemy, it's war against the domestic enemy, and they're putting our soldiers in the meat grinder.
Yeah, and it's a disgust, a disgust to no end. The people that have died, that have suffered, that have lost limbs, that have given their life, gave their word, they took an oath, and when they went to go to war, they thought they were fighting for something,
Mm-hmm.
and what they were fighting for is not what they were taking an oath for.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I mean, it wasn't what they thought they were fighting for. The America that they thought that they were fighting for, sadly to say, you know, you know, it's hard for me to say this.
It really doesn't exist, I think.
Well, and I think that
I know that the America I thought I grew up in doesn't exist. It was all.
It doesn't exist. It hasn't existed. The Vietnam War, that was not something that we went to fight for Americans for. That was not a fight for America. That's not what the Vietnam War was. And it is so disgusting to think of how many lives have been changed over the bad decisions the chosen leaders we put in office made. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
Well, to think that they could make that kind of a decision over somebody's life. And it wasn't so that they can protect America. We had no business being there. You know, John Kennedy had it right. He said, we've got no business being there. Let them work out their own problems.
Agreed.
And he was about to bring them all back. There was about 7,000, 8,000, maybe 10,000 troops he was going to bring back. And that would have been the end of it. Nope. The industrial complex, the military industrial complex didn't like that. Let's see, a few months later, he was dead. Our president was dead.
Well, he's going to bring down the secret societies too, and all of these little mini crime syndicates. You know, you got the global crime syndicate, and it's like an organism. It's made up of cells. So you've got all the cells that are, functioning as part of this organism. You've got the environmental cells, which is a bunch of nonsense. You've got the electric energy cells, and moving away from anything that looks like smart, like with the windmills and such. I'm hoping that people have got their arms around what a manipulation these windmills and solar farms are. It is a poison to our land. It's just like the solar cells. Do you realize how it heats the area up around? They're talking about it being environmentally responsible. If it's heating up the ground and everything else to a median temperature of 125 degrees and or above. I mean, I've heard it higher than that in some places. How can this possibly be good for the land? Nothing's going to live in that. It's going to turn it into a desert. You got the animals that are running for cover.
Hey,
and
Donna,
that's crazy.
Where's all the environmentalists? Where's the environmentalist groups?
Here's the question. What about the stuff with them killing geese and ducks? Pulling geese and ducks out of the parks in Springfield and that sort of thing.
Whales.
What's that? The windmills kill the
and
birds.
The windmills. They're silent as the grave.
Where's all the environmental, the EPA or whatever?
Where's PETA? Why isn't PETA spoken up against the windmills? Why haven't any of them spoken up about what's going on in Springfield, Ohio? None of them.
Tell you why.
Silent as the grave.
I'll tell you why. Because the
They're all
ones
part of it.
that are controlling this are those ones that are the supposed protesters of the environment. Those are those people. Those are the fascists. Those are the people that are not really, they're set, they're placed. This is all a plan. It's all part of the plan to yeah, we got some environmentalists, you know, protesting for us, for the birds. No, they're not. They don't give a shit. They only want to enact or be an activist when it's going to make us change, make a move to, say, create an EPA or to create something that they can use. Then once they get what they want, there are no more environmentalists. There are no more, those are placed, made up like little organizations. That's all they are. Just like BLM, just like Antifa. You know, these are all organizations that are made up by our left.
Yeah,
by our
they're like troops of actors.
by our intruding Hitler's fascism. That's what's going on. It's Hitler 2.0.
I want to show you something. This is something that Baron Reinhold, Captain Baron Reinhold, showed me, and I think this is important. I found the books, but there's also an electronic copy on this that's been made, and this goes back to, I was talking to Vicky about this a little bit before we came on, but I think this is really significant because this was about the biblical, let's see, the Exactors Biblical Blueprint series that was written, and you can find it online. I'll put it on my Telegram channel, and the Marxist ties that it really outlines the Marxist ties and what's really happened in the United States. I think it's well written and very interesting. So I'll put the electronic copy up there for everybody to look at, because I do think that there's some significant information in here. Starts right out with the fact that the people involved were Marxists, and it goes right after Karl Marx, and it doesn't take you too long to get into the what really was happening there. So the book's thesis is impossible to preserve freedom under an economy that's run by the state. If the state can take your money or the fruits of your labor, then it can leave you without means of pursuing your own personal earthly goals. Democratic socialism is still socialism. Concluded, and voting rights alone will not preserve freedom if men are not allowed to keep most of the fruits of their labor, including intellectual labor. Really super, super interesting. I'll put it up there, but we can, The Road to Serfdom. Very interesting.
I don't know if you've paid attention to this, but every time Congress passes what they call a benefit to the American people, they're defining how you manage your money.
Of course.
You can put your money in this account, you can put your money in that account, and you can, you won't have to pay taxes on it. But what they're doing is they are managing your money.
And giving you back what they think you should have.
Yeah. So I don't, I've never heard anybody really talk about that. And I don't know why. I mean,
yeah,
it's so obvious what they're doing, but.
Absolutely. So liberation theory. The book is about liberation theory. In fact, it's a book about two radically different types of theology, each of which claims to be preaching liberation. One of these systems is Marxism, the other is Christian. One is based on the teaching of a man who claimed that religion is the opium drug of the people, while the other based on the teachings of perfect man who was also the incarnation of God himself. And so going into the founder, Karl Marx, the founder of the political movement known as Communism, was an atheist. He had been a liberal Christian as a youth, as we can see in his schoolbook essay on the union of faithful with Christ, according to John 15. By the age of 20, he had abandoned his belief in God. In an essay he wrote in 1843 at the age of 25, Marx said, "Religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, the sentiment of the heartless world, and the soul of the soulless conditions. It is the opium of the people." In the same essay, he argued for humanism, the idea that mankind is the highest form of being. In other words, that man is God. The criticism of religion ends with the doctrine that man is a supreme being for man. Again, the emancipation of Germany is only possible in practice if one adopts the point of view that the theory according to which man is the highest is the highest being for man. We now know that Marx was an atheist humanist. So, and then it goes into this book goes into the comparisons of them and how we really getting away from God himself is how it leads us down the path of men proclaiming themselves God. And that's a real problem because we're imperfect. And that's why we had, the Constitution was there and any laws. If we were perfect, we wouldn't need law because we would do the right thing every step of the way. But there needs to be a standard because people don't necessarily follow that because we are imperfect. I mean, when people decide to turn to God and let him lead us, then I think we start seeing a turnabout in what needs to happen fairly quickly, right?
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, okay, well, is there anywhere that you guys want to go yet? And otherwise not, I think we're going to go ahead and end this because we're all like, I can see all of us today are just getting on going, oh man, it is definitely a Monday. I know I'm feeling that way. I didn't feel too well yesterday. I think the stress got to me. So today I'm still trying to recover from a beast level migraine yesterday. It was horrible. And you ever get in that little fog scenario after you have a migraine? I am there. We are there right now, coming out of it, but not well.
No, but I've seen people who've had migraines, and I can't imagine what it must be like because it totally wipes them out.
Yeah, that's down in Brandenburg right there. I was pretty well wiped out yesterday, but I think it's understandable right now. So I'm gonna read just a little bit more of this because I think this is interesting because to bring it back to God, we cannot live in society and have a peaceful society or a functioning society if we forget who is really in charge. It is not us. That we are not God. End of story. Discussion done. We are not God. What's that?
It's not us.
No, it's not us, and that's why we've gotten screwed up from the beginning. Okay, so what? Let's see. We now know that what Marx was an atheistic human. Let me put this up on screen so you guys can see where I'm reading here. I'll post this today. I think this is interesting.
So Marxism would be management without morality.
Well, it's Satanism. The minute it goes right back to the beginning of the Bible, that when you declare that you will be as God and you are as God, that's where Satanism starts right there. That is the core tenet of Satanism. Pike just jumped on it and said, do as you will. But the first sin was all about replacing God with ourselves. And that's what we're still doing to this day. Babylon is the same thing that we've got in our economic warfare that we've got going on right now. It was all speaking one language for economic beings and building the tower up so that we were basically in charge of everything. It's the same thing. There's nothing new under the sun. You can go back and read the history of where we are. And they've done a pretty decent hit job on the Bible because, oh my gosh, then we'd study history and know what's going on, right? So what about Jesus? What did Jesus say about himself? At his trial before the Jewish leaders, the high priest asked him, are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed? The Jews did not mention the name of God. They used such word as blessed as substitutes. Jesus knew what he was being asked. Are you the Son of God? He replied, I am. And you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven. Then the high priest tore his clothes and said, what further need do we have of witness? You have heard the blasphemy. What do you think? And they all condemned him to be worthy of death. It was the religious Jews that killed Jesus Christ. It was not the Romans. Jesus' words were blasphemy unless he was actually the Son of God. By Hebrew law, he was worthy of death. Leviticus 24:16, unless he was the Son of God. His resurrection from the dead, Matthew 28, and his ascension to heaven, Acts 1:9-11, to stand at the right hand of God, Acts 7:56. He proved that he was what he said he was. He was God walking on earth. He said plainly, I and my Father are one, John 10:30. Jesus said that a belief in him as the Son of God is a life and death issue. It is an eternal life and death issue. The Father loves the Son and has given all things unto his hand. He who believes in the Son has everlasting life, and he who does not believe in the Son shall not see life, but the wrath of God abides on him. John 3:35-36. There can be no compromise here. It is either faith in God or faith in man. It is either Christianity or Marxism. There is no honest or accurate way to put Marxism together with Christianity. These two deeply religious systems are at war with each other. Marx understood this completely. This war will not end until either Christianity perishes, and it will never perish, in quotes here, or Marxism perishes. Anyone who attempts to put these two systems together into one system is either self-deceived or else a conscious agent of communist who is seeking to deceive others. He is either ignorant or evil. And then you can go, religion is a tool of communism. Unfortunately, when you look at most of the systems out there, and you take an honest look at the systems that are out there parading as a religion, a lot of them have turned into a military move, such as Islam. It has been taken over. And when I say that Christianity has been taken over, the majority of Christianity has already been infiltrated. And so going back to those sound tenets of what this country was laid upon, the founding fathers, it was laid upon the Judeo-Christian principles that the nation was started with. Until we really understand this, we will never get our arms around it. And what does Marxism go back to? It's an atheist root. It is pure and simple Satanism. And
that's the importance of the environmental agenda, because they plan to rule mankind under the guise of management of the environment. That's the whole deal. That's where you get your Marxism, management of the economy, management of natural resources, to basically take over everything and reduce mankind to slaves.
Well, that's just it. And Marxism is, and to your point, Marxism and the way that our country works right now, our country is a communist country.
I agree.
And we are already communist. It's already, I will call it communo-fascist, because fascism had to do with the economic capture of the and using the state in an economic form to put people in as slaves. That has nothing to do with what the Judeo-Christian basis of the country had, which is true freedom. And when you look at, say, like you go back and you read Joshua or Judges and Kings, it gave us the basis of a godly form of government. It's all right there. It's not that difficult to understand. I'm going to read just a little bit further.
You know what they did, Donna?
Go ahead.
We had Judeo-Christian theology come to develop this country, but they went ahead and Satan just slipped in a Marxist political ideology. So it's like, okay, well, you guys be Christians, and we're going to run the country as Marxists, in a sense, because and they never knew it.
And then they brainwashed everybody to set them against God and the Bible and say, no, this is just, a mystical thing, and it's just a negative thing to tell you what you can't do, because you should be able to do anything you want to do. But they're lying to you, because that's not what they want. They said that, but that was just to get people to get on a stupid wagon and follow them into the capture of everyone to go along with them. It was a bait and switch. Total bait and switch went on with Marxists.
Yes.
And so they use whatever we think sounds good, because that's the tongue of Satan, is just to speak with the devil's tongue and tell us what we want to hear instead of a standard of truth.
Yep. Yep.
The popular religious system known today as liberation theology is an attempt to combine the revolutionary communism of Karl Marx and the language of certain passages in the Bible that make it sound as if the Bible preaches communism, communism's bloody revolution and socialism. This humanistic version of the Bible's message of liberation never mentions either the divinity of Christ or the perfect humanity of Jesus Christ, which is different from his divinity, or salvation by faith in Christ alone, or the requirements of Christians to obey lawful authorities, or the transforming power of the gospel, or the transforming power of God's Holy Spirit, or the continuing requirements of God's law, or God's covenants with mankind, or the 8th commandment, you shall not steal, or the 10th commandment, you shall not covet, or dozens of other basic themes in the Bible. The Marxists do not believe in a God who created this world and will bring it to final judgment. They believe only in man.
And here's my question. Why do they want to destroy man? You know, I mean,
because we were made in the image of God.
Yeah.
And then this little inconvenient fact called sin got in. And if anybody tells me they're not a sinner, I'm going to say, okay, what kind of, let's critically think about this. Is there been anything that you've done that you probably wouldn't repeat that you kind of regret?
Oh, no, not at all. In fact, back when I was living in Babylon, I had this apartment, a little dusty, you know, no furniture. Anyway.
So if you're perfect out there, I'm just going to say this to all of us. You have no conflicts within yourself.
Oh, absolutely not. None. I have no conflict with myself. None. I love myself.
Right. That's funny because honestly, if you get in a conversation with anybody, everybody will say, yeah, I have some conflicts. I just really, I've got some questions. Maybe I'm depressed, or I've got some problems. Oh, really? Then how do you base it? And why would you be depressed? Or why would you have some confusion or some doubts about yourself if you were actually perfect or there was no sin? You're condemning yourself to say, not really condemning yourself, but you're admitting to it just by that fact alone, And so the nice thing is for Christians, we can turn to God and be forgiven for things that we've done. It's not that we're perfect. This isn't a piety contest, which the Christian apostate church has turned it into, is a piety contest to see who's better than everybody else, instead of saying, you know what, we're sinners saved by grace, and we're on this path together to try to help each other. And none of us are going to be perfect until that day when we meet Christ Almighty, God Almighty, and our Savior. That's when we're going to reach perfection. And it's not going to be here, and we got to be okay with it because we were born into it.
Yes.
So, and because we're human and fallible.
Yes, that's sin.
Yeah, anybody who says that they haven't sinned, they're a liar, and they're going to burn in hell for that lie alone.
Unless they're saved by grace, and that means you got to admit to it. And so, it's like we're fallible, we're human, we're here. And I think even the things in life that are not so good, that God planned for us, and He's teaching us through them. He's teaching us to be humble. He's teaching us to look at things a little differently. Learning a lot, learning to have empathy. If we didn't go through the walk, we never learn that. Jesus had to come here and live as a human being to learn to empathize with us. It's learning. We're learning, and we're learning who God is. It's not us. And we can get to the end of this walk, say, God, I want to put the path before us that we can walk, and give us the feet to walk that path, because we can't even do that by ourselves. We have to seek Him first, and He will lead us. But we have to get ourselves right in the head and say, guess what, guys? Just so you know, I'll be the first one to say it. I'm not God. You're not God. None of us are. And we need to get past this point of trying to play the piety contest and just give it all to Christ. And when we do something right, guess what? It's only because of Him. The rest of it, it's not us.
Yep. The glory of God.
The glory of God. Lay it at His feet.
Thank God.
Oh, I did something right today. That's a good day. and be okay with it because he loves you anyway. You ever think about that? We can look at our pets and be real forgiving on our pets, but we can't with other human beings. And I think that this is one of the paths that God's got me on recently, especially with, you know, the passing of both my parents. Okay. It's kind of interesting when you lose people around you, you reevaluate, you really do reevaluate, and you see growth, right? And I can tell you right now that when people can't forgive those around them, they get stuck in a loop. They really can get stuck in a loop, and they live in the past, and they can't get past those hurts and such. You have to be able to forgive. It's not saying that bad things happen. It's not saying that at all. It is going on and not carrying that with you, because it will destroy you. And I can honestly say that you've got to lay down those things and move forward, or you will be stuck in an endless loop of grief and hate and everything else, and feeling like a victim. You got to just get up and dust yourself off and say, well, what did I learn from this? What did I learn from what this person did to me or did that I'm feeling offended by? Well, the first thing you should learn is lay the offense down. Most of the time when people do something stupid, or it's a personal attack, or you think it's a personal, it has nothing to do with you. Nothing. It's how they're dealing with the world. And we can't go on until we get rid of that victim mindset when people do things just being human. Now, there's a difference, though, between people doing things that are just human and people that are doing things that are just bold-faced evil, like pedophilia and some of the other nonsense that's going on that victimizes other people around them. That happens a lot. And even in situations like that, I talked to Jalise, and I were talking last week. She was raped at 13, and being able to lay that down and say, okay, we're going to get past these difficulties. And as a nation, we're going to have to get really good at forgiveness of human beings and realize that there's a difference between law and things that are a legal set for breaking the law or harming human beings or crimes against humanity or treason. We're not going to be able to walk away from this, and we're going to have to deal with things. Not that they can't be forgiven. That's apart from the law. There is justice that has to be served. And just because somebody says, oh, I didn't mean it, if there isn't some consequences, they're going to go back and do it again, because most of the ones that are saying that are liars.
Right. They're just sorry they got caught.
They just got sorry they got caught. They're not sorry at all for what they did, and they will go back and they will do it again. And they'll say whatever they want to get out of trouble. So it's going to take a great deal of discernment. And I wrote this morning about Goliath in my Telegram channel. I'll bring that up a minute. And I think that going back to God and remembering this, it's not about condemnation. Really isn't. It's about learning to be more like God himself, who is the only one that was perfect, because we, in fact, are not. Not one of us is.
And I try to, it's hard, but I try to, like every morning, when I get up, Lord, what do you want me to do today? This is your day. I'm your vehicle. Just tell me what you want me to do. And I try to go through the day thinking of God all the time. What do you want me to do? And sometimes I find myself, well, I got to go to 7-Eleven. But, you know, it's when we get away from God that we allow the outside world in. And this is the world of Satan. This world belongs to Satan.
Yeah. My mom had written something, and I found something that she wrote yesterday when I was cleaning out her apartment. And it was really kind of amazing, because I didn't expect this, but it was something that she wrote that she couldn't get over something that happened in the past, and something that happened to my brother and I when we were younger. And I sat there and I read this, and I'm like, you can't carry somebody else's hurts. I don't have any bad feelings there. and she did, and it's unfortunate. But we have to remember that people have to carry, and I'm going to see if I can move this over here a minute, because what I wrote this morning was, I think, significant. You can't carry on the hurts of other people. That was their hurts, and it's between them and God. And you've got to forgive and let people grow. Let them change, and watch them change. You'll see whether they're lying or they're telling the truth. People are lousy liars. They really are. But what I wrote here is, no matter how big the problem is, remember this going to this day, God is bigger. Goliath problems are met with solutions which display the power, might, and glory of God. It's not our power, might, and glory, though, if we're overcomers, and he teaches us to be overcomers. It's only by his strength that we can walk away from things that are hurtful in this world. And then, Heavenly Father, we trust you. This day we give all of our challenges, problems, and concerns to you, knowing you're bigger than anything we may encounter. This life is a great adventure. Thank you in the name of Jesus. Because we're all going to encounter these problems and such. We all do. We're going to encounter bigger problems. I'm pretty extra sure, and it's not going to be too far away. And the question is that when you see things that wasn't exactly as you believed that they were, and you're lied to, you're going to hold a grudge forever? Or are you going to say, that was their bad, it wasn't mine? Are you going to be able to walk past it when you see all these treaties that Vicky brings forward and realize that, hey, guess what? Who was involved in it? Every damn one of them was. They were all involved in it. When you look at the school systems and say, who was involved in it? Pretty much all of them were involved in it, right down to the teachers. There were some good teachers there, though, that stayed trying to do good in a bad situation. We're going to have to sift through this thing, but it's going to have to be done with a prayerful heart, seeking God's will on how to strip the power away from these Marxists who have come here to rob and steal and kill.
That's exactly right.
The medical system, the hospital systems are a killing field right now. Yes. Absolutely a killing field. Their policies are such. The school systems, you roll into it, all of the nonsense with this trans, genital mutilation of children. It is a killing field. The suicide rates are going up in those areas, and Pritzker is poster child for a fat cat politician who moved in and was funding us all of those gender reassignment, the gender mutilation clinics. And listen, there's enough of us out there blowing the horn of warning of what's happened and what's going to happen. And I'm going to tell you right now, I do believe with every fiber of my being, and trust is the first thing, is you're going to have to trust God. You're going to have to trust in the Lord with all your heart. And as it says in Proverbs 3, 5, 6, I've been putting this little graphic up and changing the titles on it on and on. But remember, lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. But the next thing that has to come after this is, God, give us the feet to walk the path you've laid ahead of us, no matter what it is. It's what Jesus prayed. Jesus was, he was praying to walk that path. He didn't skirt around it. He chose to die. He didn't have to die. He chose to die. And he asked God for the path to walk, the feet, the strength in the feet to walk the path. And God gave it to him. Of course he was God. But he could have chose to walk away, and he didn't.
Well, you know what, Donna?
What's that?
You know what, Donna?
What's that?
It's amazing to see, because first of all, no one's done anything really truly about what's going on except God. God's the only one that's brought out P. Diddy. God's the only one that's brought out all of the exposures that's occurred. It hasn't been us. It hasn't been our great works of man that have uncovered all of the Epstein and this and that. But this is God intervening on a country that we swore an oath, made a covenant with God about back in 1800 and 80 or 1887. George Washington. Anyway, this is God intervening. This is God fixing all this. It's him bringing everything out.
Because we asked.
We're certainly not doing it. We're sitting back going, oh, what's going on?
Well, I'm going to say that he'll sit there and let us do and go right to our demise. But when we stop and we ask him to come back into this nation, he will come in. He will come in if we ask him. But he's going to sit there and watch us like mull around for a while until we get good and fed up with our own nonsense, with our apathy, with our stupidity, with our thinking we know everything, and are willing to humbly turn it down and say, okay, God, we don't know anything. Please help us. We screwed this up colossally. Please help us. And then, and only then, he will step in and lead us.
Well, yeah. And I see all the things he's doing right now, and it's great. You know, he's protecting the president. It certainly isn't the Secret Service. It's definitely God.
Yeah. Well, I think that probably, I don't know what the name of the company is now, but was it Blackwater, the paramilitary group that they became Z or anyway, I think they're going to take over the training of Secret Service that protects the president, which is worrisome to me because it's more privatization of government.
Blackwater is Eric Prince, who is the brother of Betsy DeVos.
Right.
And, you know, and also he sold it to Apollo Global Leadership, which I'm hoping, and you really got to sit back and know, we don't know all the good guys and the bad guys that are out there. We really don't. You can make some assumptions based on the follow the money principle, and people have they've got a real good song and dance out there right now. But I think that for us to put our trust in anything or anyone is a fool's game, and just sit back and watch and pray to God, and then try to get it dug down into the receipts. But when you start looking at things like any of this, I mean we can look and go, okay, I hope Eric Prince is doing the right thing, and Black, with what he's doing and what Blackwater was said. But selling it to Apollo Global Leadership probably wasn't something that we should necessarily put our trust in and be a little suspicious. Now, can people be redeemed out of bad choices? Yeah. Same thing with J.D. Vance. I'm kind of out on him. I think he's going to be Pence 2.0 because of his connections with Peter Thiel and Ambrosia and some of the other nonsense that was going on. So I really think, guys, that the only thing that we need to do is we got to keep our eyes solidly on God, and he'll use all of these things, both good and bad. He will turn them into working for his good purposes. And certainly we need to be praying that God's will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so.
So, all right. Well, is there anything else that you guys want to talk about that we were talking about there? I'm glad that I was able to bring some things forward for you, Vicky, because you're just an amazing repository of knowledge. It's unbelievable how much knowledge you've done through your research. And I got to tell you that your research is inspiring. It's thorough. I don't know if I've ever seen anybody that's put this much work into putting information with the treaties and the technocracy in one place. And when you really see it, it truly gives you a pretty broad picture on how through government means every single one of them has spent decades taking this nation captive and selling us out.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, once I figured out that there was a conspiracy, it was just heads down research trying to figure out what the heck's going on. And since I was a computer systems analyst programmer, that was my focus. What are these systems where the government and big corporations have partnered together? I mean, that's so un-American. I can't even, it's difficult to comprehend. but
yeah, they've already nationalized all the businesses, quite honestly, through the regulatory capture. I mean, they've got asset capture going on all over the place.
Yeah. So that, yeah, they did convert our economy. We don't have a capitalist country now. You're right.
Nope.
It's a communist country. And so we have to figure out how to get it back, how to get our freedom back, because they have us captured.
Well, I think some of it is all of us have got to get a little bit more active in doing some litigation, and to hold them accountable. If somebody comes on your property that shouldn't be there, you're going to have to file a police report and sue them. You know what? No matter what badge they're wearing, you're going to have to do that. And anytime they move that line a little bit, you're going to have to fight to get it back. My lawsuit, I had a interesting time with my lawsuit. I'm hoping to talk to John Tater about it tomorrow, but we got a response back. They assigned a where's Chris? Chris gone. They assigned an attorney to us, and it's kind of interesting. Got a junior attorney signed to us from the Attorney General's office, or assistant, and they actually agreed with all of our claims by not rebutting them in the lawsuit, which I thought was really interesting. So, but they're going for dismissal. And it's like, okay, because they're claiming immunity. Well, they're not immune, and if they break the law, they're still not immune. And so this is going to be kind of an interesting thing. We're still oh, Frank's phone died. So all right. Hopefully he might be able to be back on, but if not, he'll be on next week or so. But yeah, it's kind of interesting, and you're going to have to remember that they're going to come back with stuff, but that doesn't mean you stop. Sometimes that means you just double down and first and foremost pray to God to give you strength and give you the path to go to fight these criminals, and just continue on and remember that the battle is the Lord's. It's not ours. He's gonna see this thing through, and he loves battles where there's a David and a Goliath and unovercomable odds that seem to be out in front of us, because then he gets the glory and we don't. And that's the way it should be, so that we know that he is God and we are not.
Well, that's totally the way it is. It's David and Goliath, especially since there really are so few people who are willing to do the work of the research and figure things out. And so we're kind of like voices in the wilderness, but I never let that stop me.
Well, and
I'm
then
on a mission, and that's it.
There's a second step. So for all of the warriors out there, like there's definitely there's always people that are better than us in any and all areas. Okay, it's just the way it is, right? Mm-hmm. So when you've got people out there, there's a beast level amount of anons out there that have done an amazing amount of work, and salute. I love these people with my heart. I love them. And researchers that are out there, and they just kind of anonymously work. They go do like you did, and do the research and put the research out there. But there's another stage of that, and that's where true warriors. And I think I'm going to define what a warrior is. It's not a person that can fight. It's a person that loves to fight for righteous causes, just absolutely loves fighting, and is willing to, when a true warrior takes a shot from somebody, it's like pouring jet fuel on a fire. It just makes that blaze burn higher, hotter, and more unwavering to fight that cause, because it's so we fight for what we love, but we also fight for those things that are unrighteous that we just absolutely despise. And so it's kind of like a mix of those things, So going back to that, we all work together. It's like you have research that has been incredible in teaching me. And I thank you, for all the years that you've put into this, because it is absolutely amazing and unbelievable how much research you've done and your abilities to knit things together into a very nice little package of criminality that's been committed upon the United States by those in office. and it goes back decades and decades. And now it's time for the warriors to step up and look at this and say, guess what, guys? It's time for us to go at this and truly walk into the battle here and start doing some work, put your shoulder against it a little bit, and get in there and do the work that needs to be done.
Yeah. Well, one thing I've centered on, or just we have to get that La Paz Treaty repealed. We must do that.
We'll have to see if we get any politicians in there that actually have the guts to do what needs to be done. And it's not going to be positive. They're not going to be positive. The next person that gets in that is actually in charge is going to have the guts to do the things that are maybe not very popular with a lot of people. And this goes back to the Revolutionary War. You know, you had the patriots and you had the loyalists. Well, the loyalists were loyal to the system because they were getting money from it, right? It all goes back to the money. Are you willing to step out into an area that you're not comfortable with and decide that we're not going to take this dirty money, which is nothing more than a bait and switch to take us and this entire country captive? Are we willing to go the distance to do that? And that's going to mean absolutely out of these treaties. You know, international treaties have no place on American soil. They have given away our independence and subverted the United States of America. We need to kick off any foreign ownership in American land, including through the corporations. Bye-bye. And the precedence is there. But it's going to take some guts, and it's going to take the people to see if they will actually back a leader that has the guts to do what needs to be done. And if the American people don't back that leader and do what needs to be done, guess what? God's going to throw us right out in the desert for 40 years until every single one of those people that didn't back that plan and didn't back belief in God running this country as God had intended a godly government to run, guess what? We're going to be out in the desert for 40 years until every last person is dead. He's done it before. There's a precedent for it. All you got to do is look at the precedent that God laid out there, and I'll guarantee you it's going to happen exactly again the way that it did in the past.
Well, money is one thing, but are you willing to sell out your children's future for it?
Right.
All the people that are taking money, making lots of money, they're selling out their own children.
Yep. Let's go back with the destruction of marriage right there. You want me to talk about the destruction of marriage? I get asked that dumb question all the time. Well, what do you think about gay marriage? I think it's a dumb question. And the real question that should be asked is, why is the government in marriage at all? They shouldn't be. It's all for the government has no place in marriage. They're licensing something that was given and instituted by God. They should not be in marriage, and it's all about the government owning your assets and your children. That is
more management of your money is like I was saying.
Yep.
You know, they tell you can deduct it if you put it in this account or that account or that account.
And they're skimming off the top of those accounts and such.
Yeah.
It's nuts, you know, through all of the undeclared taxes that they've got going on. I mean, if we really did a real good breakdown on here and I showed everybody where those taxes are going, you know, it's just like, you know, I own a bunch of property, right? And people think, oh, you know, those bad landlords. Well, guess what drives the economy there? Uneducated tenants, actually, on how the system actually works, way more than the landlords, because they want to continue to increase all of this oversight on the landlords. Well, guess who's paying for it? The tenants are. Why does rent go up? Why does rent go up? Well, a lot of it's due to the fact that there's institutional capture and overreach. If I told everybody what we pay for having everything certified and inspected, we have to pay for those. That doesn't come out of my pocket. That comes out of the tenants' pockets.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. Same thing with taxes, property taxes. Do you realize how much rents would go down if we made this correct so that people could actually buy their own houses instead of having all of these undeclared taxes and fees and regulation and oversight and on and on and on and on and on? A free market economy would deep six all of the bad landlords, and it would be quick because good people would go in and they do the right thing, and it'd put the bad guys out of business. That we vote with our dollar. Every dollar we spend is a vote in a capitalistic society, as long as it's not interfered with by our government. And it honestly, it has its way of evening things out. But anyhow, with that said, well, let's say a prayer minute, and then we're going to go on to our day here a minute. Okay, Vicky?
Okay.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so very, very much for Vicky and Chris and everyone who's willing to step forward to bring information forward so that we know what's really going on, and that as they bring the receipts forward so we can see exactly what's going on, so that we have a plan to right this nation, and the plan's going to be your plan. And I thank you for every single thing you put in front of us, the people, the information, the plan on how to get ourselves out of this horrible system of Babylon. We ask that you would help us to have eyes to see and ears to hear what you're putting in front of us, not in our own world, not in our own right. We ask that you help us see other people the way that you do, not the way we see them. We ask that you help us not to be offended when people are just being people, and not that they're trying to offend us, that they're just being people, and people are not you. We're having to learn this. Human beings are not you, and you are God. You are the one that's in charge. We hand this all over to you, this mess that we've created, and ask you to once again lead this nation, lead each one of us in our individual walk, and show us the path that we're supposed to walk, and also give us the feet to walk that path that you laid in front of us. Thank you for the beautiful day that you've given us, one more day to sing your praises on this planet. And when our time is done, we gladly walk into your arms, knowing that you're going to be there and being able to look into your eyes. And thank you for everything you've done for us. As we learn, we grow, we have the treasures of each other, we can help each other along this path, and we learn valuable lessons, and especially the lesson of your forgiveness of us and your long suffering to stand with us when we're not quite up to a par or at our best. Thank you so much for everything. You've been a great friend to us, and we want to be a friend to you also. In the name of Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen. With that said, we're going to head on to our day today, and I hope everybody has a wonderful day. Make it so. Guess what? Go to brandenburgforgovernor.com, because I am that warrior kind of person that actually enjoys fighting. I love to fight a good righteous cause. But go there for brandenburgforgovernor.com, because I'm the best non-conceder that ever conceded in the history of the United States of America. And I'd like to talk to the rightful president of the United States, President Donald J. Trump, about that more. We're going to stand together unwavering, taking this nation back. And it doesn't matter where we are. There's no problem that's too big for God to turn around. If he can raise someone from the dead, he can sure raise this economy and this nation back from the dead, because it's kind of there right now. You are here in history. But with that said, God bless you all. God bless all those whom you love, and God bless America. Make it a great day. If you don't have a good example, be one. And we'll see you back same time, same place, same bat channel tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you, Donna. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Vicky.